I never believed in the supernatural or anything out of the ordinary. That was until last night when I realized that my husband, Jack, had been getting up at precisely 12 a.m. every night. It started innocently enough, with him giving some vague excuse about needing some fresh air. I never thought much of it, assuming it was just one of his strange habits. But last night was different. It all began when I woke up and realized Jack was not in bed. The clock on the nightstand read 12:15 a.m. A chill ran down my spine as I stepped into the living room, only to find him sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the wall. His eyes were empty, lifeless, and it was as if he had no soul within him. "Jack, are you okay?" I asked, my voice trembling. He turned his head slowly to face me, and a sinister smile crept across his face, revealing teeth that seemed sharper and more menacing than they should be. "I'm fine, dear," he replied, but his voice sounded off, almost mechanical. Something was very wrong. The man I had loved and known for years was gone, replaced by this hollow version of himself. He got up and walked past me, heading towards the bedroom. I followed him quietly, my heart racing. In the bedroom, he stood before the mirror, his reflection sending shivers down my spine. His eyes were completely black, and his skin seemed to ripple as if something were moving beneath it. I gasped and took a step back, my fear intensifying. He turned to me again, his unnatural smile never wavering. "You should go back to bed, dear. Nothing to worry about." But how could I go back to bed? I knew I had to find out what he was doing at 12 a.m. every night. I couldn't simply ignore the fact that my husband was no longer the man I married. I decided to follow him. The next night, I pretended to be asleep, my mind racing with fear and curiosity. At exactly 12 a.m., Jack rose from the bed and silently made his way to the front door. I slipped on my coat and shoes and followed him, careful not to make a sound. He walked down the empty streets, moving with an eerie grace that I had never seen in him before. I kept my distance, hiding in the shadows, as he reached an old, dilapidated building at the outskirts of town. The place had always given me the creeps. Jack entered the building, and I hesitated for a moment before following him inside. What I saw there still haunts me to this day. The interior was dimly lit, and a group of figures surrounded him. They were tall, grotesque beings with pale, almost translucent skin and eyes that glowed with an otherworldly light. I watched in horror as they seemed to merge with Jack, their forms twisting and warping him until he was no longer recognizable as human. It was like he was becoming one of them, losing himself in their malevolent collective. I knew I had to get out of there, so I backed away slowly, my heart pounding. I managed to make it back home without being detected. The next morning, Jack returned to bed, seemingly unaware of my discovery. I knew I couldn't live with that thing masquerading as my husband any longer. I packed a bag and left, vowing never to return to that house of horrors. I don't know what those beings are or what they wanted with Jack, but I couldn't stay to find out. Now, I live in constant fear, looking over my shoulder, knowing that they might be watching, waiting, and ready to come for me. Whatever happened to my husband that night, it turned him into something unrecognizable, something sinister. And now, I can't help but wonder if he was ever truly human at all. This morning, as I huddled in my new, unfamiliar apartment, I heard a knock on my door. Dread washed over me like a tidal wave, and I cautiously approached the entrance. When I opened the door, I was greeted with a sight that would haunt my nightmares for the rest of my life. Standing before me was a figure that looked exactly like my husband, Jack, or at least, the man he used to be. He wore the same clothes, had the same face, and yet, I knew it wasn't him. His eyes were no longer the beautiful shade of brown I'd fallen in love with. They were empty, soulless voids. He looked at me with an expression that sent shivers down my spine, a twisted parody of the affectionate gaze he used to give me. "I missed you, honey. Please come home," he said, his voice devoid of any warmth or emotion. Terror surged through my veins as I slammed the door shut, locking it as fast as my trembling hands would allow. That thing may have taken on my husband's appearance, but I knew it was no longer him. Whatever had happened to him that night had turned him into something else, something monstrous. And now, it seemed that it had followed me, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to reclaim me. I live in constant fear, knowing that the being that wears my husband's face is out there, watching and waiting. I can only hope that whatever it is, it never finds its way back into my life, or worse, into my new home. A memory of my husband's transformation and the dread in those empty, soulless eyes haunt me every day, a chilling reminder that some secrets are better left undiscovered.